Now, welcome into the Saints Insider Postgame Show for preseason week 1. I'm Zach Ewing along with Rod Walker. We're coming to you from South Louisiana, while the Saints have completed their first preseason victory out in Phoenix, beating the Arizona Cardinals 16-14. Feel free, we are live, so feel free to leave your comments and questions for our guys. Hopefully be joined by Jeff Duncan, Luke Johnson, and Matt Paris later on in the show as they wrap things up out in Arizona. But for right now, me and Rod going to kind of take you through the game, answer some of your questions, react to your comments, all of that good stuff. So let us know what you thought of the Saints beating the Cardinals 16-14. Rod, we'll start with you. Obviously, it's a preseason game. It's hard to draw too many sweeping conclusions. But what were some of your main takeaways from tonight?
I think I'll start with the defense just because they've sort of, been the kind of the stars of training camp so far, the defense, especially the pass rush, which was an area of concern last season. I think tonight we saw some of the same things that we had seen in Irvine kind of, transferring over to this game. And you want to kind of see how that defensive line would match up against another opponent. They've been playing themselves, the whole time for training camp. So it's good to see them match up against somebody else. End up with 4 sacks tonight, which is really good because sacks is something that they really struggled with last year as far as getting to the quarterback and actually getting them down. They pressured the quarterback, okay last season, but they really struggled with sacks. So I'll start on that side of the ball because I thought they looked good. I thought Carl Granderson looked good. I thought Brian Brzee looked good. Chase Young is a guy who we've talked about all through camp. I thought he played really well tonight. So not a surprise. I mean, that's what we saw in camp, and again, it translated over. On the other side of the ball, I thought the first team offense, I thought they really struggled. I mean, you kind of wanted to come out and see them play well. You wanted to see Derek Carr come out like he did last preseason when he was 7 of 8, drove the team down the field, 70 yards for a touchdown in his preseason debut last year. But he really struggled tonight, 2 of 6 for 12 yards, I think it was. He just didn't really – the first team unit, which played 2 series, just never really got on track tonight. So that was, it's kind of discouraging. You want to see them play a little better. I think they probably were. I mean, they weren't showing a whole lot, but still, you just want to see them look a little sharper than they did. First pass, he attempted, got deflected. So just a lot of just some kind of sloppy play on those first 2 series with the first team unit.
Yeah, I mean, it looked a lot like Saints games from the last couple of years for the first half, where the offense is scuffling and the defense is picking them up, and the game's nothing deep into the second quarter. But I think you're right. Like, not only did the Saints have 4 sacks, they were in the backfield a whole bunch, and there was a couple of times they could have easily had more. Now, again, like last year, they got to finish some of those, but Chase Young was back there. Brian Brzee, I thought, looked really good. He looked sharp. Carl Granderson had a couple of really good pass rushes. So really good look for the defense. The offense, as you mentioned on the other side, I want to start actually with the backup quarterbacks, Rod, because I know that's what they saw most of the playing time, and that's what everyone came to see. Did you feel, and we've got the numbers here on the screen, did you feel that either Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler really separated himself tonight? I thought we saw some good and some bad from both guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, Haener had, I think, by far the best play of the night, the completion to the A.T. Perry down the sideline for 58 yards. But then, Rattler comes in and, leads the team on a touchdown drive, his first drive. So, I mean, that was really impressive. So, I mean, I think, what you saw from both of them I thought was promising. And, going into this training camp, I wasn't really sold on the 2 backups. I just didn't know. I was like, man, if Derek Carr goes down, this team's in trouble. I feel a little bit better about that now than I did, 6 weeks ago if you'd asked me that same question. So, but yeah, I mean, they got the joint practice with the 49ers. They have a game against the 49ers and then one more preseason game after that. And I think it's going to take all of that for it to actually play out to see who's going to, take the lead in that race for the backup quarterback. I do think, Rattler's game-winning drive to set that field goal to win the game was impressive as well. So he made some really good plays. And I know you look at the stats and Haener has a better quarterback rating if you look at the numbers. But, I mean, both of those guys, played really well. They both completed, I think, 9 passes. One of them was 9 of 13. The other was 9 of 17. Yeah, Rattler was 9 of 17. But, they both were solid. I mean, that's what you wanted to see out of those 2 guys.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I guess we should talk about that last drive just because it did decide the game. The Cardinals scored a touchdown. Actually, it was old friend Tony Jones Jr. scoring the go-ahead touchdown for the Cardinals with 1:55 left. He caught a short pass from Clayton Tune, took it in. Play was reviewed. He reached it inside the pylon with 1:55 left. So the Cardinals go up 14-13. And then Spencer Rattler has this game-winning drive to set up Charlie Smith's field goal, which was a cool moment too. Charlie Smith never kicked in an American football game before. He's kicked in Irish football, Irish rules football. But to do that in an NFL stadium and win a game, even if it's a preseason game, I think a cool moment. But that drive was weird. Rattler made a couple of good throws. He had one to start the drive to Samson Nacua, and then he had another one, a back shoulder throw on the final completion of the drive to Nacua. In between, he actually missed a couple throws yet. He kind of settled for short throws that left the receiver in bounds and kept the clock running. They really got helped out. The Cardinals jumped offside twice when it looked like the drive might stall out at the Cardinals 42-yard line. Cardinals jump offside twice, basically give the Saints not only a first down, but put them in field goal range. So it's hard to take too much away from it. It's against third and fourth string guys. But you'd still rather see the guy execute than not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing about it. I mean, preseason is always sort of hard to gauge when you look at it that way, but you do want to see these guys executing against who they're playing against, and that's what he did. And you talk about that last drive. I kind of want to see Charlie Smith have to kick from further away than that, because I mean he nailed a 66-yarder in pregame warmup, so I kind of want to see him get tested a little bit, but it was still good that he was able to come out there and nail the kick, because I mean I guess it's when your job's on the line and there is some pressure with that. And if he misses that kick, I mean, he's probably out of here. I mean, you can't miss, a little chip shot field goal like that. So he was able to knock it down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It kind of would have been like Blake Rupe last year, I think, in the third preseason game. They gave him a shot from 58 yards to try to win, and he won the job anyway.
Right.
Over Will Lutz. But give Charlie Smith a chance to see what he can do. He's an international player, and so the Saints can keep him on their practice squad, I think, without him counting against the limit. So he's probably going to be here all year anyway. And I just think it's fun to see what the guy's got. But having said that, let's go back, Rod. You're watching the Saints Insider Postgame Show. We're brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Saints beat the Cardinals 16-14, but that was after really some struggles by that first-team offense, which you mentioned. Derek Carr, 2 of 6 for 12 yards. It's funny. He completed a pass to Chris Olave on third down in the first series I think it was for 10 yards on 3rd and 8. And that was a nice throw and kind of a nice moment, and you get it rolling. And then they went 3 and out. Dennis Allen gives the first-team offense one more series. They went 3 and out again. Carr underthrew Olave on a deep ball. He had a screen pass that was really sniffed out by the Cardinals and just kind of spiked it. I don't know that he didn't execute anything other than maybe that deep ball to Olave, but as you said, it just wasn't crisp. Now, what's interesting about this is the Fox 8 broadcast of the game had Carr on for a sideline interview during the second quarter, and Carr said what I thought was kind of interesting to hear a player come right out and say it, that this was a very vanilla game plan. He said, I'm going to quote here, "It's frustrating because you're getting ready for a game, but you're not game planning. I didn't even know who was going to be out there jersey number wise, but the execution and getting through the play calls, of course you want to score and win, but the communication is what we wanted to execute, and we did that." And Rod, I get his point here. Yeah, true. It's a new offense. All you want to do is get out there and kind of get your feet wet, so to speak. Kind of a strange thing to say that, we didn't even know who would be out there. That I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that. I was surprised he even did the interview during the game, actually. But, I was, and I go back again to last year. I mean, last year for Derek Carr, it was a new offense. And he went 7 of 8 and went down the field 70 yards and scored a touchdown his first drive. So, I don't know if that's really a good excuse. I mean, you've been practicing, even if it was vanilla, I think that they should have been able to, you want to see them execute better. And I think that was disappointing. I think if you take the one most disappointing thing about this game would be how the first team offense played. I mean, this is a unit that that's what Clint Kubiak was brought in here for. And I mean, and again, he ran 9 plays. So I don't want to just say that everything was a waste based off of 9 plays, but I mean, those 9 plays were not great. for the most part. I mean, even the pass to Olave, I mean, he caught it, but it almost could have been broken up, I think. I mean, it was kind of a dangerous throw, but I mean, it was. I think then Olave he bobbled it a little bit or something, but
it was definitely contested. Yeah,
yeah, it was just kind of yeah. I mean, it was he got it in there. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think the Saints should be happy with what they saw with the offense. And again, we'll see. They got joint practices this week, and we'll see how that goes for this team.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned last year when he went 6 of 7 for 70 yards or 7 of 8, whatever it was, against the Chiefs in the first preseason game, and like the dome was like, I mean, you laugh when you say it, but that was like the peak of the Derek Carr era when everyone was like, "Oh my God, we got ourselves a quarterback." And then by mid-season last year, by November 1st, everybody thinks back on that and goes, "What were we thinking?" That was just the preseason. It didn't mean anything, obviously. And honestly, the same is true about this.
Right.
Like, okay, he struggled. He was 2 of 6 for 12 yards. It means nothing. They've got those joint practices against the 49ers, got 2 more preseason games. I don't know that we'll see Derek Carr, but clearly what you saw in those 2 series today is not indicative of what we may or may not see in the regular season. It's just that, quite frankly, and like I tweeted out that quote I just read from Derek, and I was surprised at how negative the response was to it from everyone. I mean, it was just like people were just piling on, saying, "Oh, Derek's already making excuses and he's already doing this and doing that, and I hate this guy and I hate that guy." He's gonna have to show it before he can turn that sort of thing around.
Yeah, the good thing about his 2 of 6 is that it was at State Farm Stadium and not in the Superdome, because it would have just been a pretty brutal night for him. But yeah, I mean, him saying that, I actually almost tweeted it out too, and I just kind of knew where it was going to go. And yeah, it was probably not what they wanted to hear, but again, and I don't know if we'll see him again before the preseason's out, just because when I listened to what he said, he kind of mentioned how, the next time we see this offense in the regular season. So I don't know if he was hinting that he wouldn't play again until the regular season starts or not, but you almost feel like he needs to play at least one more series, right? I mean, you want to see them gel at some point. You don't want to see them go into the regular season and that's all they have to show for it is a 2 for 6 performance for 12 yards. So I think you almost kind of want to see him one more time. And I don't know if that's the next. And maybe joint practices will be enough. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll see enough in these joint practices, because that's really when you get some real work in. I mean, it's ones versus ones, and you're really kind of getting that's probably a better indication than the preseason game, actually. So, maybe we won't see Derek Carr again in the preseason.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I don't disagree with you that maybe he needs another series. Maybe it depends on how those joint practices go. We can talk about that. I mean, the Saints return to Southern California. I actually assume they'll fly back tonight. They practice tomorrow in Orange County. They have Monday off, and then they practice Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday are the joint practices with the 49ers. Then both teams will fly up to the Bay Area to play preseason game number 2 next Sunday night. And I don't know. I mean, after you joint practice against a team, do you need a series in a preseason game? And then the third preseason game, are they going to throw them out there against Titans backups? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they probably – I was kind of not thinking about the joint practice, but yeah, I would just think with joint practice, I would think that would be enough. And there's really no use in doing that again next week. And obviously we know how that third preseason game typically goes. So yeah, that may be all the fans get to see of Derek Carr until the season opens against the Panthers.
And to your point, man, and we got four long weeks to talk about this still, but that Panthers game, if he comes out and throws incomplete on that first pass, like, are the Boo Birds out already for Derek Carr? I mean, is it that bad?
I think it could be, especially if if Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler play well. I mean, I think, and I regardless of how well they play, I think Derek Carr should be the starter. I mean, I don't think that's not changing. So,
yeah.
But fans don't really see it that way. They just, fans are kind of, they want to see something now. And until he goes out and, leads a scoring drive, I mean, he's going to hear the disgruntled fans.
Yeah, and again, we'll see the full version of this offense at that point, and we'll see what they can do. I mean, Carolina doesn't have a bad defense. At least they didn't last year. So, it'll be a decent test. Going back to tonight's game as we continue here on the Saints Insider Postgame Show, Saints beat the Cardinals 16-14 preseason week 1. We're here brought to you by Tulane Doctors, so our thanks to them. And we'll be back with you after every game this season, both preseason and regular season. And I know Saints fans don't even think this is possible, but anything that comes after that too. In case the Saints, it's not impossible that they would make the playoffs. But I do think there's a lot of pessimism. What are some other good things you saw tonight, Rod? I thought Kool-Aid McKinstry flashed. I thought they had a pretty good night on the defensive line, as you mentioned earlier. Jordan Mims looks like he continues to look like at least the third best running back on this roster, if not better than that.
Yeah, for me, I would say A.T. Perry. I mean, he's a guy that coming into the camp, we thought we kind of had him penciled in as probably the third receiver, but during practice, I mean, he hadn't really separated himself from the other guys, from Cedric Wilson and Equanimous Brown, whose name I butcher every time. He hadn't really separated himself. But I thought tonight he really did. You know, he caught 4 passes for 85 yards, caught the deep ball, the 58-yarder from Jake Haener down the sideline, which was, again, that was a play of the game. So I thought he had a really good game, and I think he needed a really good game. So it's kind of good to see him, you know, have that kind of performance just based on how his camp had gone. I thought his camp had just been kind of so-so, and I think tonight he showed what he can do. And he was only targeted 4 times. I mean, he caught everything thrown his way, and that's what you need to do to you know, kind of earn your spot. So I think he did that. You mentioned Kool-Aid. I thought Kool-Aid played well. I thought you know, he encouraged him. I thought he had some plays where he played well. You mentioned Jordan Mims. He's a guy who in camp we thought he had been really impressive. He's kind of making the most of his opportunities with Kendre Miller being out. So that's what you want to see. Oh, Willie Gay. I got to talk about Willie Gay. He went to Mississippi State. I got to talk about him, right?
You got to.
I thought he played well. He had a really hard hit on somebody early in the game. And, you know, they've kind of raved about his athleticism throughout camp. He showed that tonight, and he's a guy that's going to really be able to help that add some depth to that linebacker unit. You know, we always talk about DeMario and Pete Werner, but Willie Gay is a guy that can really step in and play, and you'll see him on the field a lot, I would imagine. So it was good to kind of see him. Chase Young, I mean, you see his strength and his power and just how he can gets in the backfield, and that's what we've seen the entire camp from the first time he stepped on the field after kind of, you know, ramping up. Those are the guys who stood out for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Cardinals were starting Desmond Ridder. They did not start Kyler Murray. He didn't play tonight. But that Saints defense, all of the other Cardinals' other starters were on the field on offense, I believe, other than Kyler Murray. So take it with a grain of salt.
Not Marvin Harrison.
Saints defense.
And not Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., yeah. But like that Saints defense looked really good in the first half. I thought they looked like they were ready for the regular season. That's without DeMario Davis, without Marshawn Lattimore, without Paulson Adebo. They still look very good. Now, again, got to take the preseason with a grain of salt, but the defense certainly a bright spot. Some of the negatives, it's got to start with Trevor Penning, right? I mean, he had a holding call. He had a couple of plays where he really gave up quick pressures. Just still looks like very much a work in progress here in year 3. Yeah,
I mean, I thought he struggled, and you know, everybody that we talked to during camp, I mean, they all kind of everybody's saying work in progress, which kind of lets you know that everybody seems to know that he's not quite where he needs to be yet, and that's a concern. I mean, he's playing right tackle, so you need him to play well. I thought the penalties were pretty bad in this game. They finished with 9. 7 of those were in the first half, and there were back-to-back penalties by Udo. Playing guard, and he had a holding and a false start on back-to-back plays, and you know, just little stuff like that you got to clean up, and that's kind of one of those details things, especially when you talk about false starts, and that was kind of an issue at the beginning of last season, and you just got to clean that stuff up, and I think that's the first thing Dennis Allen said in the press conference. But I mean, we've kind of been hearing that a lot from him since he's been the head coach. He say we need to clean that up. So the penalties are a little concerning, I thought, tonight.
Yeah, and then the again, second and third string guys out there, but they had a little bit of trouble containing Clayton Tune's legs in the second half. At times, that's always been a concern for years now for Saints defenses. So that could be another negative. But honestly, like I think the Saints kind of got out of this game what they wanted to get out of it. First team offense obviously didn't execute, but they learned a few things. It's kind of spinning it forward, Rod, as they look forward to joint practice. I will say one positive tonight. I don't think a single Saints player left with an injury tonight.
Yeah, I was
which
going
you
to say
always
that.
want.
Right. That was the next thing I was going to mention. So I'm sure we'll get to practice tomorrow and we'll find out if somebody did something. But yeah, as far as we know, everybody they got out of the game clean, and that's big as well. Especially when you look at the number of injuries this team has faced throughout training camp. I mean, to me, since I've been covering the team, I don't know if I've ever seen this many injuries, especially like key players. Like, I mean, DeMario never gets hurt now; he's out, but he's a guy that he'll be ready. If it was a real game, he probably would have played. But you just see so many guys that have not been out of practice, and you don't want to see that this time of year.
Yeah, no doubt. And I just wonder how many of them are actually serious injuries. Guys like Kendry Miller, there's no question he would have liked to be out there for this game. And same thing with Mason Tipton, the wide receiver from Yale, who's had a good camp. Like, those guys need to play in the preseason to make the team. I don't know if Kendry Miller's roster spot's on the line or not, but it could be.
Yeah, I mean, you can just – and I've never heard Dennis Allen come out and talk about injuries the way he has with – especially Kendry particularly. He just, he kind of just puts an emphasis on, you need to be playing. You need to be out here practicing to make this roster. He can't evaluate players if they're not on the field to be evaluated. And that's something he's really talked about a lot. And I just think some of these guys who aren't out there, I think they're probably going to, get the shit because they're not out there.
Yeah, it costs you your job. I mean, there's no doubt about that. That's that could be an issue, and that'll be something to watch as we go forward heading into these joint practices. How many of those guys are able to get back out on the field? That really probably for me the top storyline of the week.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we'll be talking about, and so yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to see. I don't think, and you mentioned this. I mean, I don't think any of those injuries are like you think somebody's gonna miss games when the season starts. But if you're on the fence, I mean, you need to be out there and doing whatever you can to get back out there, because I mean the time is, it's kind of getting short now. I mean, you only got like 2 more weeks of this and to try to earn your spot.
Yeah, a cut day is August 27th. So we're looking at a couple of weeks from Tuesday, which the Saints only have one more practice. So you're really two more weeks of practice is all you've got. And I don't know, like, it's okay. Isaiah Stallberg, the linebacker, did go into the injury tent mid-game. I'm just reading now, just to correct ourselves on not a single player. But, nothing against Isaiah Stallberg, but if that's the one guy who you lose, then you'll take that, I think, in a preseason game to come out with just a, kind of a depth linebacker injury. So, yeah, just to wrap things up, Rod, we're not going to go too long tonight. I know those guys are busy on deadline out there, but I think tonight, let's give Charlie Smith his flowers. That's not easy to do, to step out there. He's been inconsistent in camp. He hits the game winner in his first game. So I want to headline that. First team offense, boy, if that's all we see before the regular season, there are going to be a lot of question marks and a lot of skepticism from the fan base. But I also think some of your fears maybe of this defense slipping a lot have been comforted tonight. I think, it's preseason. I know Kyler Murray wasn't out there, but that defense looked like it's still got some animals.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, again, it just carried over from what we saw in the what I saw when I was in Irvine, and because I was wondering, like, okay, is this defense really this good, or is it because this line is a little shaky, or what is? And I think tonight, just seeing them do that against somebody else let me know that I think they have a chance to be really good. I mean, I think what we've seen is who they really are, and this is without DeMario, without Adebo, without Lattimore. So I mean, you add them to the mix. I mean, I think they could be really, really special, and I think they might, especially early in the season. I mean, the defense is probably gonna have to carry this team until the offense gets it together, if they get it together.
We'll finish with this, and I'm curious. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it, and we'll see if we come up with the same guys. But which Saints player do you think helped his case the most tonight, and which Saints player hurt his case the most tonight?
Is this help your case to make the team, or just help your case to?
Well, open-ended question. So if you, to me, I guess how Derek Carr plays in a preseason game ultimately means nothing, right? So to me, it's to make the roster and to actually, because Dennis Allen is not going to name someone else the starter besides Carr or Chris Olave or something like those guys. I guess you could say their stock's down a little bit, but to me, it's to make the team.
Yeah. Okay. I would say, I think Jordan Mills may have done enough to, he may be able to steal that third running back spot. I think, and this wasn't a spot, I think A.T. Perry is going to make the team, but I do think A.T. Perry kind of solidified.
That was mine.
I think he solidified himself as that third guy. And again, I had it in something I wrote this week about, that was one of the concerns I still had, was that third receiver. And I feel like he sort of, showed that he can handle that job. And I think obviously he'll need to continue doing what he did tonight, but I think he definitely took a giant step forward tonight.
I think some of those number 3 wide receiver candidates will be playing, in the next preseason games, just because the Saints will need to continue to see them. Like Cedric Wilson was lined up as the third wide receiver with the first team offense, but A.T. Perry obviously looked good. I think you'll see both of those guys get some time and see who can fight it out for that spot. As far as hurting his case, and it's not that he's going to get cut, but I still go back to Penning. Like, I just don't think Trevor Penning is – the Saints may have to start to look at some alternatives at right tackle. I don't know at what point you do that.
Yeah, if they had to if they played a real game tomorrow, that would be my biggest concern about his team. It's been my biggest concern. Well, collectively, the offensive line's been my biggest concern, but particularly that spot. I just don't know if we saw – well, I do know we didn't see enough tonight to feel comfortable with, with them trotting those 5 guys out there, especially. Well, not – obviously McCoy, Ruiz are fine, but there are some concerns about the right tackle position.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Trying to think of anyone else who really kind of hurt their case. I guess if you just don't talk about a guy much, and I know Jeff Duncan wrote this in his column that's on NOLA.com right now, actually. Isaiah Foskey played a lot in the second half, and you did not hear his name very much. Again, he's one of those guys you start to wonder. He's at a position where you have to make an impact to get playing time, and he's not making much of an impact.
Yeah, and that's kind of weird, because with him, he's a guy that in camp he's looked much better than last year. We kind of have been talking about him, and we talked to him the other day, and he talked about how much more comfortable he felt because he's not having to think as much. He can kind of just go out and play football. You didn't really see that tonight. I thought Anthony Orji, who's another guy in that same boat, who said that he's playing more loose now, I thought he played a little bit better tonight. So, I think you can see it. But, yeah, Foskey is a guy that, you want to see. You want to see the Foskey from camp and not the one that we saw tonight. So,
yeah. All right. We do have Matt Paris from State Farm Stadium out there in Glendale here. So, Rod, we'll say goodnight to you and bring on Matt and wrap things up here. Appreciate it, Rod.
All right.
All right. Matt, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
All right. I can. Yep. Saints Insider Postgame Show here, brought to you by Tulane Doctors. As we roll on, Matt's coming to us live from Glendale, Arizona, State Farm Stadium. Just finished with postgame. Saints beat the Cardinals 16-14. As much as you can make a takeaway from a preseason game, what were kind of your primary takeaways tonight?
Yeah, I think the competition's got a little more competitive, specifically with the backup quarterback battle and kicker. That was real impressive at the end with Charlie Smith. I know it was for 37 yards, but even in camp, he had kind of been shaky from there. So that was a pressure moment. And the same thing with Spencer Rattler, leading that 2-minute drive. We've actually seen a lot of that in practice, but for him to lead that 2-minute drive was what the Saints needed to see. And, I expect probably next week for him to get they've been alternating here, so he would probably get the first run over Jake Haener, and then we'll see. But I don't think these competitions are still very open.
Yeah, and Rattler's, Rod and I were talking his final drive. It was kind of strange. Like, there was a couple of big Cardinals penalties that helped out, and they had all 3 timeouts, had plenty of time. It wasn't really a true hurry-up situation. But ultimately, this is a pass-fail quiz, and he passed.
Yeah, definitely. And, I don't think the starting offense necessarily failed tonight, but it definitely wasn't the result that you wanted to see, even though things are really vanilla. Like, for them to only get 2 series, I think was a little bit of a disappointment, and for them not to do anything with those 2 series, rather. But yeah, I mean, the pressure was on Rattler there. The pressure was on Charlie Smith, and they delivered. And Jake Haener, too, at the end of the first half, had a 2-minute situation where he got them into field goal range. So I thought both quarterbacks did well, backup-wise anyway.
Yeah. Going back to the first teamers, Derek Carr, as you mentioned, struggled in just 2 series. Rod and I gave the quote he gave on Fox 8 at halftime, or actually it was in the second quarters during the game. And it may have gotten taken out of context a little bit, but people are always making excuses and this and that. But you just talked to Derek in the post game, I'm sure. It is true that the Saints were clearly not necessarily moving the ball and scoring touchdowns was objective number 1 tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the locker room for Derek Carr, so I didn't hear anything presser-wise from him. But as someone who's watched almost every one of their practices this summer, that was not their offense. This thing looks quite a bit different. And once the actual bullets start to fly, and there's a ton of pre-snap motion, a lot of play action. There were some of those elements tonight, specifically with the play action stuff, but they really toned it down in the pre-snap motion. And if you believe everyone in this scheme, when they talk about the scheme, that's how they get open. That stuff fools defenders' eyes and can really scheme these guys open. And I think that's what they're counting on once the regular season begins.
Yeah, and you don't want to give away those tells or those reads to defense when you don't have to in the preseason. And I mentioned to Rod, like last year in the first preseason game, Derek Carr went 6 of 7 for 70 yards and scored a touchdown. And then by Halloween, we had all forgotten about it because the offense was struggling so much. So you got to take this with a huge grain of salt.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the thing that if there's going to be a difference from this preseason from the last one is, I think I would like to see Derek Carr at least get another game, another series or 2, just to kind of be sharper as they still install this offense. Because even though, it's not going to be the same exact offense that they're going to be running in the regular season, I think it still would be important for them to kind of get that chemistry established, particularly on the offensive line. I thought was a little rough tonight at times. So I don't know if Dennis Allen will, but I think they should play the starters at least another game.
Yeah. Do you think that's a possibility? I mean, I with joint practices, will they turn around and play him again next Sunday night?
Probably not. I would be surprised just because joint practices are treated kind of like a preseason game, and then everything else is vanilla afterwards. But I don't know. This is where Luke would probably be the better person, just because he is more familiar with how the Saints operate.
Yeah.
But from what I've been around, I would be surprised a little bit.
I think I would be surprised too. You mentioned the offensive line. Obviously, a question mark coming in. I don't think they were terrible tonight, but there were definitely some moments, especially with Trevor Penning, where those questions are not exactly answered either.
Yeah, no, I mean, they've done a lot this summer to try to build his confidence up, but ultimately the plays are going to be what matters. And I don't think he had his sharpest outing by any means. Was really beat badly on that play that Derek Carr had to throw away. He kind of overthrew Chris Olave, whereas if he had a little bit more time, he probably would have been on the money because Chris Olave was open. And then he also had that holding penalty, which really set them back. It's not really a sharp performance from him. Then I think the other guy that really struggled was Oli Udoh, playing left guard, playing some tackle. He had those back-to-back penalties that were really costly as well, and forced basically the Saints to kick. So they're still the offensive line is still a spot that's really up for grabs still. We saw Fuaga and Penning get those extra reps because they still want to develop. And but yeah, it's left guard is a competition for the Saints as well right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Defensively, Matt, again, Kyler Murray didn't play. Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't play. The Cardinals did have most of their starters out there the first couple of series. And this defense just kind of showed you and reminded everybody that, hey, this can be a top 10 unit, maybe even better than that in the NFL. I mean, they really got some playmakers on that D.
Well, hey, yeah, they do. And Desmond Ridder is a quarterback. I know they've shut him down in the past, but he's a guy that's been able to scramble around, been able to do some damage with his legs. And outside, I think, one run tonight, they didn't give him much time at all to do that sort of stuff. So I thought it was a really encouraging thing from the pass rush. I thought Brian Brzee had a really great game. And there's just so many options on this defensive line right now. Like, I don't think they did this in the game, but like in practice, that NASCAR package where Peyton Turner kicks to the inside and Brian Brazee's like a defensive end, and they have Chase Young and Carl Granderson on the field. That's been a really impressive package for them, but I think it'll be intriguing come the regular season. But yeah, they were still effective without having to do, I think, really any of that stuff tonight.
As we look ahead before we let you go, what are you focusing on as you go back to Southern California for the resumption of training camp and those joint practices with the 49ers? One thing Rod and I talked about was the Saints would love to get some of these injured players back. I don't know what the timeline is. None of them seem like serious injuries. You'd love to get those guys back, but what else are you going to be keeping an eye out for?
You would, yeah. I mean, there were 12 guys tonight that were out. That's a pretty lengthy list, especially if they do want to kind of scale back some of these reps as the preseason goes along. I think for me, the thing too is also what happens at wide receiver. I thought A.T. Perry had a really good game tonight. Easily his best performance of the summer. He had been kind of having a pretty uneven camp, and Dennis Allen had challenged him to kind of show more. I thought he definitely did that today with his 58-yard catch, but he's a guy that I think Spencer Rattler after the game, or no, Jake Haener described him a little bit of as a gamer, one of those guys who rises to the occasion of games, and that's an important thing. But if you're a former 6th-round pick like A.T. Perry, to make this team, you have to show it in practice as well. So we'll see if he can establish a little bit more of that consistency. But I thought his performance tonight kind of threw an interesting wrinkle in that wide receiver race.
All right, Matt. Matt Parrish is a beat writer for the Saints for the Times-Picayune, NOLA.com. We're going to let you go, and we'll probably wrap things up here on the Saints Insider Postgame Show, but we'll say goodnight to you from Glendale.
Great, thanks.
All right, so that's Matt Parrish. We're still waiting on Jeff Duncan and Luke Johnson from the locker room. We may wrap things up here before they get done just because it is late. It's a primetime game, and I believe the team is still talking. I know Jeff just tweeted out that Jake Haener said he played with 22 stitches in his face. He had a procedure to remove a cancerous, I guess you'd say, a cancerous growth on his face this week on Monday, and still had 22 stitches in his face and had some bandages to protect that. Obviously didn't affect him. Jerry says win. Stephanie says black and gold. And yeah, look, we said this last preseason. You'd rather win them than lose them. It doesn't really matter. Probably helps Charlie Smith's confidence. Probably helps Spencer Rattler's confidence that they were able to finish this out. And we'll finish up here. We'll go through some final stats. And if Luke or Jeff happen to join us before we're done with that, then we will talk to them as well. Otherwise, we are going to call it a night. But from the passing, we mentioned Derek Carr, 2 of 6 for 12 yards. I wouldn't read too much into that. It's not what you want. But again, last year he was 6 of 7 for 70 yards and a touchdown, and the dome was rocking, and it meant nothing. I mean, we've just got to keep in mind that the results of the preseason don't mean anything. They're not running the real offense. It's just the way it is. Having said that, good to see Jake Haener, 9 of 13 for 107 yards. He had the 58-yard touchdown, or not touchdown, but long pass to A.T. Perry. And then Spencer Rattler, 9 of 17 for 70 yards. He also had the Saints' only touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and led the 2-minute drill for Charlie Smith's field goal. Let's see. We do have Jeff Duncan. Jeff Duncan did show up, so we'll go ahead and go there. Welcome in Jeff from State Farm Stadium out there in Glendale. Just got done with the Saints in the locker room. What are your kind of big picture takeaways from this first preseason game?
Well, I mean, look, they got a win, which obviously you always want to try and instill that as a habit. I thought both the backup quarterbacks flashed the potential that we've heard about. To me, that was the biggest takeaway, is both of them operated the offense very efficiently, had their moments, but more importantly, really managed the game the way I think for 2 young players, the way you want to see. And then the best thing, really, Zach, above everything else, is that they really came away, it looks like, largely with no major injuries, no frontline players that were sidelined with any kind of injuries. And that's really the most important thing on a night like tonight.
Yeah, we talked about that. I mean, actually, pretty unlikely that you wouldn't lose a single key player. I think Isaiah Stallbird, the linebacker, who's really just camp depth at this point, was the only one to leave with an injury. So that's obviously great news, especially given how many injuries they've had at camp. I want to ask you about Derek Carr in that first team offense. They struggled. It was only 2 series. What's the proper reaction to that?
Do not overreact to that. I mean, they're just basically running. I think most of this tonight, as Dennis Allen said, was just to get, a kind of a run through of the operation, especially with Clint Kubiak up in the booth, calling plays from up above. That's new. I think just getting a feel for the operation and the process in game. It's unusual to have the offensive coordinator upstairs, and Dennis Allen said he's not 100% sure that that's going to stay that way. But for tonight, they wanted to see how it worked. And Derek Carr said it's unusual for him. Jake Haener said he's never had the offensive coordinator call from above. So I think for everyone, it was a little bit of a trial run to see if this operation works. But more than anything else, I mean, we're talking about vanilla plays. As Dennis Allen said, new play caller, new scheme, bunch of new faces on the offensive line. He needed that, starting offensive unit to play some snaps more so than maybe other years because of all the newness on that side of the ball. So don't overreact to the lack of production. I just think, that's what the preseason's about.
Yeah. Do you think they got 2 series tonight? Is it possible that this is a year where Dennis Allen and staff give the first team offense another series at some point in the preseason?
Yeah, I definitely think so because of all the moving parts, all the new faces, and because it's a whole new scheme, like he said. I think we could definitely see them play more. I mean, he had a little edge to him tonight when he was asked about it. He said, look, I think Andy Reid played Patrick Mahomes the other night. I think it's okay to play your starters in the preseason. So I think we could see more of this going forward.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the joint practices with the 49ers are the wrinkle there where do you see enough from them on Thursday and Friday to where you don't need to put them in the game? I don't know. But as far as the backups go, I thought both backups you mentioned did some good things. Neither was spectacular. But Dennis Allen's big question going in was, do I have a backup quarterback on this roster? And I really feel like they took a step in answering that in the affirmative tonight.
Yeah, I'm not ready to go there yet, but I did like what I saw from both guys, especially operating in the 2-minute offense. I mean, that's really what you want to see is how do they run the operation when you have to have it. And both guys made plays. You can see the potential in both players. But again, we're in the preseason. They're operating against backups. I mean, I think everything you have to consider, relatively speaking. And I think that's the evaluation that's going to be ongoing throughout preseason. I think we'll learn a lot more about both guys this coming week when they go against the 49ers, one of the deepest teams in the league. We're going to get a good gauge and evaluation of both Rattler and Haener in those workouts.
Same question I asked Rod Walker. If you had to boil it down to the one guy who helped his case the most tonight and who maybe hurt his case the most tonight?
You talking about just the quarterbacks or just in general?
In general on the Saints.
Well, I thought A.T. Perry, certainly after, early in camp, kind of being called out by Dennis Allen, for not really making very many plays and needing to step up. I thought he had a big night. I wrote my takeaways from the night. I thought it was a good night for the 2023 draft class when you consider Jake Haener, Brian Brzee, A.T. Perry were all part of that class. And if you throw in Blake Grupe and Lou Hedley in the kicking game, both of them had very solid nights. I know they weren't drafted, but they were part of that same rookie class a year ago. Those are the guys that are going to be leaned on for this team. This team needs these young players. We've talked about it a number of times on the podcast. They need that 23 rookie class and some of the rookies from this year's group to play well this year. And I thought they saw a lot of progress out of those guys in tonight's game, especially Brian Brzee. I mean, he's He kind of remade his body. He's a little lighter, I think, to try and get a little bit better get off and a little bit more mobility and range on the defensive line. And he was pretty much unblockable there for a series or two going against the backups for the Cardinals. I thought that was a very good sign as well.
Yeah, that defensive line. I mean, we know the Saints have a great secondary. They've got an all-pro caliber player in Demario Davis at linebacker who didn't play tonight. But kind of the weak link in that defense last year was up front. And I thought tonight, man, Brzee looked really good. We know Chase Young's having a great preseason. Carl Granderson got a sack, or at least flushed out Desmond Ridder for a sack. Nathan Shepard got in the backfield, which I don't remember ever happening last year. Like it was a promising night for that defensive line.
Yeah, just flip it over and think about how much pressure you saw or lack thereof on the Saints quarterbacks, at least in the first three quarters. Now, Arizona was able to get some pressure later, but early on, I mean, all three, I thought the Saints quarterbacks operated pretty cleanly in the pocket, really had good protection, but it was the exact opposite with the Saints pass rush. I thought they got great pressure. They really weren't doing anything extravagant up front or exotic in any way. They were just beating their man. And again, I know they were going a lot of times against backups, but I do think, I don't know if there's a Pro Bowler on the Saints front, but I think they've got a very good first and second unit. There's a lot of good quality depth there. And you got a guy like Isaiah Foskey, who is a second-round draft pick and had such a decorated college career. When he's kind of doing mop-up duty in the third and fourth quarter as your third-string defensive end, that's a pretty deep front line.
Yeah, and Foskey may be a guy didn't get your answer on who maybe hurt their case the most. I thought he was largely invisible. Another guy would be Trevor Penning, who just is still a major question mark. Yeah,
and I thought obviously Oli Udoh, who really single-handedly kind of blew up a drive with back-to-back penalties early on, and then James Robinson, the veteran running back who put the ball on the ground. He got lucky, the ball went out of bounds, but he got stripped. Can't do that trying to make the team where he's at on the depth chart. So I thought those guys all kind of hurt their cause tonight.
All right, before we let you go, Jeff, what are you kind of looking for this week from the Saints? I've asked this to both Rod and Matt, and they both, you want to get some of these injured guys back. That's number one. But where do they go from here as they continue to prepare for the 2024 season?
Well, I think this is a huge week. We're going to get a really good beat on this team going against the 49ers, one of the elite teams in the NFL, elite on both sides of the ball in the trenches. I'm going to be watching this offensive line to see if the continued issues that they've had rear their head against the Niners. And then also on the other side to see if this defensive line really is, as effective as we've seen so far in camp, or is it a byproduct of the Saints offensive line not being very good? I think we're going to get a much better read on it this week when they go against someone in another jersey as opposed to going against each other. So I think we'll come out of this week coming up against the Niners with a much better read on how strong the Saints are in the trenches. And that's really where I think Dennis Allen wants this team built, is how he's built this team. A lot of high draft picks. I can remember last year, Zach, when they went against the Chargers, that was the first sign that we saw that Trevor Penning was really going to struggle in pass protection as he went against, Bosa, on the edge. He just really struggled. And before that, up to that point in camp, it hadn't shown itself that much. So I think we'll get a better feel this week as well when he goes against this 49ers front, which is definitely one of the most talented in the league.
Yeah, another Bosa to deal with. So that won't be too fun for Penning if he has not improved. He's Jeff Duncan. You can read his takeaways from tonight's game at NOLA.com. Big night for the sophomore class, as he writes. Jeff, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the Saints Insider podcast later this week.
All right, Zach. Take care. Everybody have a good night.
All right, there's Jeff. And again, just going to wrap up with the stats. If we are joined by Luke Johnson, great. If not, we are going to go ahead and call it a night. I was on the rushers. Jordan Mims, 10 carries, 38 yards, the leading rusher. James Robinson, 7 carries, 27 yards. Again, had the fumble that luckily for him went out of bounds. Jamal Williams, 6 carries for 20 yards. Spencer Rattler, 2 carries, 8 yards, and had the touchdown. On the receiving end, A.T. Perry, 4 catches for 85 yards. Of course, he had the 58-yarder. Dallin Holker, 3 catches for 24 yards. And Samson Nakua, 2 catches for 19 yards. Both of those, I believe, came on the final drive. Stanley Morgan, 1 catch, 13 yards. Chris Olave, 1 catch for 10 yards. And on the defense, 4 sacks for the Saints, 1 for Brian Brzee, 1 for Nico Lalos, and then a split sack for Carl Granderson and Kalika Hudson, and another split, Nathan Shepard and Jack Heflin. I think I messed up who actually split those, but those were the guys with the half sacks for the Saints. So no turnovers in this game. Saints win it 16-14. They get the game-winning kick from Charlie Smith. Also had a good field goal from two field goals in the first half from Blake Rupe. None of them all that long, but they do get it done. Got a comment here from Joshua who says, I don't know if this is a tongue-in-cheek comment. 0 reliable QBs drafted after the 3rd round. I mean, it's just not true. Now, I don't think Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener is ready to start in the NFL. I'm not telling you to get excited for that, but that's just simply not true. Look at the guy the Saints will see in joint practice this week. Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Irrelevant, drafted the 7th round. Certainly a reliable quarterback. Tom Brady was a 6th-round draft pick. Dak Prescott, I believe, a 4th-round draft pick. So, yeah, that's just not true. Obviously, most of your starters around the league were drafted higher, but I just don't think you can look at where they were drafted and make any sweeping conclusions. So, can't make any sweeping conclusions from a preseason game either, but we are here and happy that you joined us for the Saints Insider postgame show. Saints beat the Arizona Cardinals 16-14 in preseason week 1. We will be back next week, next Sunday night after the Saints take on the 49ers. And in the meantime, we'll have at least a couple of Saints Insider podcasts. Luke Johnson will be joined in California by Jeff Duncan and or Matt Paris for those. So keep it locked to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Our thanks to our sponsor, Tulane Doctors, and our thanks to you for checking out the postgame show. Have a good night, everybody, and we will see you next time.